Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Today I'm joined by Carole Spiers, who is an expert in stress, resilience and well-being, and we really go deep and unpack this challenge as it pertains to you in the safety profession. I'm sure you'll get a lot from this episode because Carole gives some great practical advice, and this absolutely is a topic that is relevant to us all. So I trust you will enjoy it. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thanks for joining me today on the podcast, Carole.
Pleasure.
Been looking forward to this after hearing you speak at the People Sustainability Summit before Christmas.
That's right. It was a very, very useful session. A very, very useful session at the summit.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great couple of days. Well, I only managed to make it for a day, but it was a great couple of days from everything I hear. So yeah, and I was keen to get you on because I think your area of expertise is clearly very relevant to the audience of safety and risk professionals. So thank you for sparing a bit of time with us. Should we start by just giving perhaps a bit of context? So you specialise in kind of stress, resilience, and well-being. Could you give us a kind of global picture of that in terms of, the size and the scope of the challenges in those areas?
Yes, I think let's pick up on the sustainability conference because they would actually their day two was looking at mental health and well-being and resilience. So it's really interesting, more than interesting actually. It's really the right time to be talking about those topics and is talking about health and safety at the same time. So realistic, we're looking after the physical well-being of somebody. We're also looking after the mental well-being of somebody. And so really that was a summit which was very, very useful in that way because it really promoted both
Yes.
both of those areas.
Yeah. And in your experience, is this an area that we are now focusing more on, is an area that we're now more aware of compared to, let's say 10, 15 years ago?
I think stress today is different to how it was 10 or 15 years ago. Obviously, we've been through COVID. We've come out the other side of COVID. That leaves behind it its own challenges as well, because the modern world of work today is different to how it was but pre-COVID. We're in a different place. So it's not the same. It's to certainly not the same. So
No.
are there different challenges today? Yes, there are. Is it as it was? No, it's not. Is there learning that comes from those times? And yes, there is a huge amount of learning, but the modern world of work is not the same. Today, people are working in a hybrid manner. They weren't doing that beforehand. We now use Zoom as if it's just one of those things that we use all the time, which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And managers have a different challenge today than they had years ago, because pre-COVID, you'd have the manager who'd catch up with their employees, sometimes around the water cooler, sometimes around in a coffee shop, to actually be able to speak to people. Managers today have it far more difficult to manage their people insofar as everyone's working remotely. So is remote working? Yes, it is working. A lot of people really like the hybrid way of working, but the people that are the managers who's managing the team has different challenges upon them. How do they keep in contact with them? How do they see that they're not hounding them? Do they send emails out at 6 o'clock at night, thinking to themselves, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that? But sometimes the employee wants to, because that employee wants to actually work in the evening and not in the afternoon because they're collecting the children from school. So you can see, Christian, how we're getting all different sorts of issues that are cropping up. And realistically, not everybody is the same. So if a manager says to you, well, what do I do about this, Carole? Then very simply, talk to your employees. Do they want you to write to them after 6 o'clock at night? Do they not? So really, it's the level of communication has to increase, which means the manager needs to listen and communicate extremely well. Here's your
Mm.
challenge, if I may say here, is that
Yeah.
managers aren't necessarily promoted into positions because of their, shall I say, their listening or their EQ skills. Managers are very often promoted into their positions because of their IQ and their technical skills. And
Mm.
then you're saying, oh, hello, you've got to now manage 50 people remotely. Well, let me say that is a challenge. It can be overcome, but it is
Yeah.
a challenge.
Yeah. Certainly, a lot of what you said there resonates with me, because I've got a small team and we're all spread about, and we did have an office before COVID and we gave it up, and we've now just started with another office where we're trying to get more interactions face to face with the team, because I think that's going to be really, really valuable to us. The other thing that really resonated was that kind of communication volume and style. So for example, have had colleagues before where they just send me long email after long email after long email. Um, and the emails just kind of, they don't get deleted, because the way that I manage my inbox is, once I've dealt with something, it gets filed away. So anything in the inbox is to be dealt with. But if it's so overwhelming and long and frequent, it just became a bit of a nightmare, and it just never got dealt with. So they weren't sort of managing uh, upwards or sideways, or whichever way you want to look at it, to me very well. Um, and then I suppose that last piece about the skill set of managers. I mean, if you think about sales, for example, just as one profession where, typically you get promoted in sales because you're able to sell a lot. But just because you're the best person at selling does not mean, as you say, that you're the best person to then lead and teach and manage and support other people in doing that. So a classic example of where lots of things are intersecting and causing difficulties for people, I suppose.
And then I was told the other day, Christian, a manager said to me, or my boss says to me that I've just promoted to 50 people team. And my boss says I will learn on the job.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you don't learn people skills on the job, because I'd say to you, at whose expense? Whose expense are you learning on the
Mm,
job? So what I'm going to say to you is that, yes, management has a huge responsibility. Yes, it does. Let's just get them trained. I'm not
yeah.
putting blame at their doorstep. I'm just saying that's where it is. They're
Mm,
managing people. That's
yeah.
what they are paid to do. They can enjoy managing people, or they can be challenged by managing people, but manage it well. So all I'm saying is, let's just get them trained. Let's not blame them. Let's just say it's a fact. They've got the people to manage. Let's get them trained. End of.
Mm. So when you're talking to uh, organizations at a kind of senior level, um, I guess that you're flagging up to them, and perhaps they're aware of, and be interested to know whether people are aware of this or not. The fact that doing this um, poorly, let's say, or doing this not as well as you might do, will have an impact on the bottom line at the end of the day. Is that the kind of starting point for the conversation, or is it more around the sort of, well-being? We want to look after our people, and we're less concerned about the effect of that on the bottom line
That's
perspective.
a tricky one, Christian. It's a tricky one. I'd love to say that everybody loves everybody and they're doing it because of the health and well-being, and many people are. They believe that kindness is important. Agreed. Having understanding, caring, support, listening, all those skills, that skill set, the soft skill set. I don't regard them as a soft skill set. I regard them as a soft skill set with a hard edge, because really, if you get those right, you will really see. Now watch this. You'll then see performance increase. You'll then see productivity increase. You'll then see bottom line. You'll then see increased profitability, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to make a profit. You'll see less competition, because people will want to work in your organization. So therefore,
Mm.
your reputation will be, oh, they're a good company to work for, because they actually value their people. And when I say value, I mean really mean value, which means you make people, you help people, you show people that they are valued and that they're recognized. You don't treat them like a number. You don't just say, well, I've got 20 people in my team, I don't really know who they are. You actually say, no, I know Bill, John, and Mary. I know them. And I speak to them once a week, and I have a call with them once a week to catch up on things like, how are the children? How's your mum? She wasn't very well last week. So you can't actually allow for 5 minutes catch up, me time, personal
Mm.
time. How are you? And when you say, how are you? Here comes the rub. You have to wait long enough for the answer. So there's no
Yeah.
point saying, hello, how are you? Fine, which is just what you tend to do. Hello, everybody says, hello, how are you? I'm fine. I mean, the world can be falling around your ears, but you
Still
are
say that.
fine.
Very British response. Yeah.
It's an automatic response. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not saying not to actually use fine and to say, how are you? But let's accept what it is. It is a first level courtesy. No more. You're not genuinely saying, how are you? Because if I say to
Mm.
you, Kristen, how are you? I wait. I stop. I have a silence because I wait for you to tell me. And then I'll
Mm.
have some open questions to ask you about what you said. Is any of this difficult? No. Do people necessarily do it? No. However, can people be trained to do it? Here comes the big whacking yes. You can be trained. You can be trained to manage silence. You can be trained to manage tears. You can be trained to manage anger. Is that what's going to happen to your people? Well, people are people. They get angry, they get sad, and they cry. What do you do
Mm.
about it? You can be taught. So let's just say that those skill set, this is soft skills get with a soft skill set with a very, very hard edge. Is it going to increase performance? Yes. Will people want to work harder? Yes, you may not be able to pay them any more money. I get that. However, the fact that you say, Christian, thank you for doing what you did, I really appreciate it, makes you actually feel good and makes
Mm.
you want to work harder. And so therefore you can build trust, rapport, engagement by listening, but not just listening, actively listening, which means you'll also know how to recognize some of the signs and symptoms of stress. If you're trained, you may not automatically, but before stress gets out of control in any organization, are there things that you can do about it? Yes, of course there are. Looking
Mm.
out for the signs and symptoms, but you need your listening skills to actually enable you to do that. So therefore, I'm going
Mm.
to say to you, how are you? Wait long enough for a pause. Might say, how's work? Fine. You might say, I'm a bit stressed out at the moment. Tell me about it. And the simple words of tell me about it are so simple, but your employee may well just do that. And you're far better off to know if there are challenges that they are having at that point rather than further down the line when they're not productive, not performing, and basically increased accidents.
Mm.
Absolutely. So you can see where the health and safety connects exactly with the mental health and well-being.
Mm. And I think you hit on something, which is that um, people don't want to harm their employees. Nobody chooses to do that. I suppose the interesting challenge is, if there's a physical harm, that's very visceral and evident, and we can see it as plain as day. Whereas the stress, the mental health challenges are less visible. And I also wonder, be interested to get your view on this, whether your typical sort of C-suite exec has kind of maybe a interesting relationship with stress, whereby they're living in a high stress environment and managing it themselves, and therefore perhaps they're not kind of as aware that or as perceptive of other people in the organization in different roles suffering from that. So is that one of the challenges, that it's kind of a bit less hard to spot?
Yeah, I wonder, you said they're managing themselves. I question that. I
Yeah,
see
yeah.
too many people, Christian, who burn out. The
Mm.
signs and symptoms of there, not sleeping, not eating, taking themselves away from family and friends, on their email 24/7. This constant adrenaline. They're actually addicted to their adrenaline. So you're going to tell me, which you're not, but people are going to say to me, that's good for them. And I'm going to say, no. How
Mm.
long do we think somebody is going to manage their lives effectively when they're under that much pressure and stress, under that much stress? Because they're not going to. So
Yeah,
therefore, what we're saying is that people get hooked onto the adrenaline. And then possibly, I mean, very often that's the true A-type person who's hard driving of themselves, hard driving of others. And so therefore, they're very difficult to actually work for those people because their expectations are too high. So if I say, I don't want any emails after 6 o'clock at night, my boss may say, who's the hard driver, who's the A-type person, who's pushing themselves and pushing others. No, they don't understand that. They don't understand that I want a life outside. So therefore, it's very much C-suite have a huge responsibility because it all starts at the top.
Mm.
If the C-suite team are actually saying, we want hard driving people, this is what we want, and mental health and well-being, oh, poof, we don't worry about that. And you're expendable. If your employee feels that they're expendable, then that's exactly what they'll feel. And do you know
Yeah.
something what they're going to do, Christian? They will, wait for it, vote with their feet.
They'll leave, yeah.
They'll leave. And then what's that going to cost you in terms of productivity and performance? What's that going to cost? It's going to cost huge to that organization. So we have to start at the top. And the people and the organizations who have the CEO, the COO, who at the C-suite team saying, we need to look after the health and safety of our employees. We need to look after the physical health. We need to look after the mental health and well-being. We can't necessarily, this is what the C-suite is saying. They may say to their team, we can't necessarily stop the amount of stress and the amount of stress that we're having to manage. Can't necessarily stop that because it's the nature of the business. However, we can be taught how to manage it within our capability. And within our capability could be different for everybody. One person may be going through a divorce, a bereavement of some kind, and then you give them extra stressors. That could just tip them over the edge. So I'd say to other people in the C-suite team, know that that's what's happening. So therefore, is anybody giving that individual time to take some time for themselves? So we have to build our resilience. There's no question of the fact that we have to build our resilience in order that we can manage our daily pressures. Because we mustn't forget, pressure is good for us. Pressure gets us up in the morning. Pressure is a motivator. So what is stress? Very simply, stress is too much pressure. When you get too much pressure, that's when you're not coping effectively. They say, are the increased accidents? Yes, there is the people don't feel good about themselves, low self-esteem, lack of confidence. So you can see none of this is complicated. None of what I said is complicated, but I have to say, are we doing it? Some organizations are doing it extremely well. They're the organizations I speak to because they want to talk to me. The people that I don't speak to are ideally the organizations that I'm trying to get to because they're the ones that think that people are expendable. And I'm saying people are your most valuable asset. And yes, they are. And they'll say, oh, well, if it's not Carole, it'll be Mary outside the door. And if that's the attitude, then all the health and safety and the mental health and well-being and helping people, it's not going to make any difference because they think people are expendable. Do the individuals feel valued and worthwhile? The answer is very simply a big fat no.
Yeah. And I suppose the next layer then on that is, so just speaking from my experience in a safety arena, you will almost always find that boards are on board with, being safe and looking after the physical health and well-being of their people. But what sometimes happens, in my experience, is there's a kind of a disconnect between the aspiration of the board and what the board is saying, and then somewhere in the middle between there and, let's say, the shop floor, to use a simple term, there are things like budgets and P&Ls and KPIs and drivers that are meaning that middle management sometimes are taking decisions which is not necessarily aligned with what the board is saying is the aspiration of the business. And have you found similar challenges in your field, and how have you been able to overcome those?
Yes, I think the thing is, if the board isn't actually communicating sufficiently to the next level down, etc., then you're not going to get one message coming through. You have to be very, very clear that the message is that we do value our people, because if that is starting from the top, people will actually feel that they are important and they are valued, and so therefore you're then going to build what we would call as a healthy workplace culture. The healthy workplace culture is where people do feel that they get up in the morning and what they've done, their contribution is appreciated. And
Mm.
I'd also feel that my manager or somebody along the lines, it might be a team, but usually a manager, to say, thank you, Carole, you did a good job there. Well, how does that make me feel? So therefore, it starts at the top. If you go into an organization, and a lot of organizations want us to go and train them to help, they train their managers to help them to reduce stress, recognize signs and symptoms of stress. And you go in at, say, line management level, which has its value, it certainly does.
Mm.
However, if they're not being listened to themselves, and if nobody really cares for themselves above them, then
Yeah.
basically they're saying to me, well, Carole, you're teaching me all these skills of how to reduce stress, how to manage stress, what to do about it, how to listen to my team. But, and I say, yes, no one's listening to me. And there's nothing I can do about it other than to say, you have to set your line in the sand, meaning you have to then say, this is your team, this is who you are, whether you're listened to or not. Ideally you are, of course, but if you're not, make sure that you listen to your own team. It's not the way that I prefer to work. I much prefer to work with the C-suite, make sure they're on board, talk about it, discuss it, make sure we come up with interventions that might help. It could be mental health first aiders, it could be training, stress management training, it could be listening skills training. That's where it should start at, at the top. It
Mm.
should start with them, and they should say, this is who we are, this is the type of culture that I want. Good health and safety, good physical and mental, good physical and mental psychological well-being. That's what we want. This is what we pride ourselves on. And
Yeah.
their reputation will be where everybody wants to be, which is you want people to come to want to work for you.
Mm.
And so therefore, it's so many organizations spend so much money on trying to get to encourage, for their profile. This is such a simple one. Just make sure that you value your people and listen to them. People want to be there.
Yeah. So is there kind of, you mentioned a few strategies there, mental health first aiders and so on and so forth. Is there kind of a playbook that you would run through with clients, or that you'd recommend that people use to approach this challenge in terms of, certain, like there are 5 steps, or there are 3 key philosophies, or is it very much bespoke and dependent on the organization itself and, where they are currently and what they do and all these other things?
If an organization says to you, what can we do about it? There are various interventions that I can put forward,
Mm.
depending on what they're already doing. I'm a
Okay.
firm believer in not recreating the wheel. Ask the
Mm.
organization, what are they doing? Do they have a counseling program? Are they running any stress management training in their management training schedule? What are they actually doing? How can we build onto that would be my question. So the kind of interventions are, yes, some organizations will take an employee counseling service, so that we provide one. So there are some organizations can actually do it. You can have an employee counseling service. You can have mental health first aiders. So there are a lot of organizations today now bringing in mental health first aid teams, and they can either have a half a day's training or a 2 days training. You can also bring in first contact teams, which means you train individuals to become listeners in the organization. That's extremely, I've been running that in organizations for many, many years. You can run simple, basic stress management awareness. Get people talking about it. So already we've come up with various interventions there. It's really, it's listening, it's managing the it's stress management training, it's helping people to identify stress, and also to make sure you have a culture where people don't feel there's a stigma in speaking up, because that's
Mm.
key to everything. Because if there's
Yeah.
a stigma in your organization and people are fearful of speaking up and speaking out, then all the most wonderful training in the world isn't necessarily going to help. So it's got
Mm.
to be that you build that culture where people feel it's okay. If I say to my boss, I'm not feeling so well today because of whatever that may well be, for the boss to say, well, let's talk about it. Let's make some time, maybe not today. Let's catch up tomorrow morning, 8:30, let's have a conversation.
Mm.
So really, you want to make sure that the culture is healthy. You want to make sure there's no stigma in saying, maybe I feel stressed. What does that look like? What does stress mean? We know we all use the word stress. It is so
Mm.
overused, so overused. But nevertheless, it does have a meaning. So in which case, if
Mm.
somebody says they feel stressed, how can I help you? What's
Yeah.
causing you stress at the moment? Ask the questions. So
Mm.
get the culture actually working together is the most important. And make sure
Yeah.
you've got good communications, top, right throughout.
Yeah. So, where in your experience are organizations doing best already? So, if you come in and someone invites you in to have a look and give some advice, where do you typically find people are doing pretty well, or organizations are doing pretty well? And then, perhaps there are two or three themes that come out there. And then on the flip side, where are people not doing so well, organizations not doing so well? Perhaps there are two or three kind of commonalities that we could highlight.
I think that the organizations who are demonstrating this healthy workplace culture are doing far better in terms of reputation, in terms of employees wanting to work there. So therefore, I would say to an organization, what are you doing? So mental health first aiders is good. It's not the total answer. You can't put the answer to a team of 10 or 20 people and say they're going to manage the whole organization. But it's certainly a stepping stone. Is
Mhm.
it a tick box exercise? I have to say for some, that's being really, really kind, for some organizations, having mental health first aiders I'm only saying may,
Yeah.
be a tick box exercise. But you'll really find those that are taking it very seriously are getting underneath that. We're now getting health and safety saying, what can we actually do? So those are the kind of questions you have that people are asking. And I'll say, what are you doing already? What are you actually doing already? Is there a stigma in speaking up and speaking out, whether it's health and safety or whether it's mental health and well-being? Do your employees feel that they are are resilient enough to manage? What is the theme? Do we ever hear from the CEO? Do we ever get messages from the CEO? Do we ever get that feeling that you're with us and we're all working for the common good? Because let's look at it. We're all actually working in a community. We work so many hours in one day. It is a community. It is a community. If you can make your company like a family, then that really could well easily help you, because people
Mm.
want to work there. People actually feel that I am supported. Somebody
Mm.
actually cares for little old me. And if you can embed that, it's not, none of what I've said, Christian, is complicated, but it
No.
does need to be said strongly. It needs to be said that that people can speak up with no stigma, and that people are valued. And really that's the drum that I have been beating for countless years. I've been working in the
Mm.
profession for many, many years.
Yeah.
And are there slightly different stressors today to how they were? Yes, there are. But something, people are people.
Mm.
And if I say to you, thank you, and I say to you, you did a great job, I don't care what industry you're in, you will actually go like, that's nice.
Yeah.
So if you just want to get to the that's nice part, that feeling, and it is a feeling, let's talk feelings in industry. Because
Mm.
realistically, as soon as you start talking feelings, then you know exactly where people are. Facts are
Yeah.
facts, feelings are feelings.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely agree with that one. Speaking about stress then, and thinking about managing that, one of the things that I've seen within the kind of health safety world is that over the years things keep getting bolted on. So it was environmental, and now it's mental health, and then maybe it's quality. And
Mm.
so is what's the best way, I suppose, of dealing with this? Should there be somebody who is um, particularly looking at this area, or is there a risk of, if this is added on to a health and safety person's remit, for example, that sort of a means they're too stretched to achieve the right outcomes in this area, and B, are we then overloading them and potentially adding stress to that person that we want to avoid?
It's a good point. It's a very good point. You don't want it just to be bolted on for the sake of bolting it on. You want it to be a part of the whole of this culture, this healthy culture. And again, is asking the questions. Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel overloaded? Is everything okay? Are you managing? I'm going to say to you very simply, make the time, ask the question. And it's only then will you know, ask the question of your health and safety advisor. Say to them,
Mm.
do you feel that is this manageable? Do you feel you can cope? What else can I do to help you? What else do you need from us? Ask the open questions. They're all open questions. And let's wait long enough for the answer. We know that we need that. So therefore, it's really ask the questions. For one person, for John, you give him the role of dealing with mental health and well-being together with his health and safety role. And John, because that's the kind of guy he is, absolutely fine with it. He's a Samaritan in his spare time. No problem at all. It fits his profile very well. Now you speak to Mary and she says, oh my gosh, I don't do people. I do health and safety, but I keep it very facts and facts.
Mm.
And so do I really have to do people? And I'll say yes. And she'll say, okay. And I say, well, okay, how can I help you? What is it that you need? Because we want to take you into the people arena. We want you to be in health and safety. Yes, of course. We also want you to be in mental health and well-being. What do you need from us? And she'll say, well, I'm not quite sure what you need from me. No, I'm not quite sure what I need until you tell me what your expectations are. Because the most important thing is do not overload somebody. Do not overwhelm them. Just because you think there's a new toy, we'll do something. We'll tag this on to health and safety. No, this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about taking it seriously. We're talking about the importance of doing it. And we're talking about giving support and training as and when needed, and keep the dialogue open.
Yeah. No, that makes very good sense to me. And are people following that advice? Are people ending up unwittingly overloading their staff with this, or are you able to cut through and get that point across that it needs to be focused on and it should be, its own kind of work stream?
I'd love to say that people are not being overloaded. I'd love to say it. Tis not so. Tis not so, because I see too many people burning out. High expectations of themselves, high expectations from their organization. And so therefore, I'm not getting sufficient engagement and communication from their bosses, because we know everybody is busy. And a boss will say to me, Carole, I don't have time to speak to my people. I wish I did, but I don't. And I'll say, do you know something, John? You don't have time not to speak to your people. Because actually, if you don't speak and if you don't listen to your people, then quite honestly, stress can get out of hand very, very quickly, because you're not listening to what they're saying. If an employee is saying, oh, I feel overwhelmed, and you say, oh, you'll be fine. Just, the oh, you'll be fine is not good enough. It won't work, because they'll feel, I did tell my boss, but he or she did not actually listen to me. And the answer was, yes, you'll be fine. Doesn't help anybody. You'll be okay once you settle in. Oh, there's lots of videos for you to watch. There's lots of things you can do. More work. But then you'll be fine after that. And I think to myself, you should live so long, because people, it's what's happening. It's what's happening. People are burning out, and then the organisation said, that was a surprise. And I say, really? You mean that was truly a surprise? Say, well, yes, probably. No, maybe not. And you sort of get that. Let's talk about it, because the warning signs, Christian, are on the wall. They truly are there. They're there for people to see. Here's your however. Do people read them? Do anything about them? They'll think, oh, she'll be okay in due course. Oh, Carole will be fine. Will she? Not necessarily so. And then when I burn out, they'll say, wow, wasn't expecting that. And I'll think to myself, really? You weren't expecting it? Was the writing on the wall? Yeah. Did you do anything about it? Nope. Did you think you could get away with it? Probably so. Because we've got mental health first aiders, that is enough. It's not. Yeah. This isn't a tick box exercise. We've got a counsellor. Counsellors are great. Employee counsellors, great. You refer to my organisation for employee counselling, that's fine. But you should be actually, before you pick up that phone to speak to us, you should be managing your teams of people yourselves, because you're at the coalface. Might be a bit old-fashioned, but don't worry about it. You're at the coalface. You're actually hearing from people. You're actually listening. You're the ones listening. Employee counselling, sure, I can give you an employee counsellor, fine. But actually, we're further down the line. See what you can do yourselves. Get your managers trained. Get them to pick up signs and symptoms of stress. get them to listen attentively.
Yeah. There are lots of parallels with my field of slips and trips, where people kind of have this assumption, oh, we're doing this and that must be enough, and actually no, it's not enough. So we do need to keep on banging the drum and raising awareness. So Carole, if this has resonated with somebody and they would be interested to kind of explore how you can help and working with you, could you just talk us through kind of how that works? So kind of what's your sort of suite of services, and kind of how that process would look?
The process starts very simply with a conversation. I will never send anybody, here's a whole selection of services that we offer. I know the services offered. We have some good services that we will provide for individuals. So what I'd want anybody that's listening, watching this, who has a stress-related problem in their organization, is just to email me or pick up the phone. I would just say to you, let's talk about it. Let's see what you're doing already. Let's see how we can build on what you're already doing. Do you need some employee counseling? Possibly yes. Do you have an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, in position? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do you have mental health first aiders? Are they being overloaded, or did they just do a 2-day or a half-a-day training course, and as an organization you expect them to change the world? Because let me tell you, they can't. They can't change the world. So it's a great service, yes, but a half a day's training and send them out there and say, we've got, the tick box exercise is not, in my opinion, the greatest thing to do. So that's a counseling, that's mental health first aiders. Get your managers trained. It's very simple. All the things that I've said, there is nothing complicated. It's very, very simple. Get them trained to recognize and identify early signs of stress. Get them trained to listen so they know what to do about it. And there you've got a suite of programs which realistically you can say, well, this is what we can offer. What are you doing already? Where are your hotspots? How can we help you? Because you just want to know where you can fit in alongside. I very much look at any time when we're working with an organization as collaboration and a partnership. I want to be where they are, and I'll ask the questions. How can I help? What are your problems first? And then how can I help? And they'll say, well, these are the problems. I'll say, okay, well, we could put this. That could help you. What you're doing in health and safety, we could actually link in there as well. Are you overloading your health and safety officers, managers, and just giving them mental health to manage as well as a bolt-on like you managed before? Are you doing that? Then I can look up for some of those hotspots. So I'd say anybody that's interested, if this resonates, it triggers for anybody, pick up the phone, talk to me, because I'm here to listen.
Good stuff. Thank you, Carole. And so, other than that, any particular resources, or is LinkedIn a good place to find you? Any other sort of ebooks or articles or anything like that you'd like to plug, I suppose?
As a professional speaker, I have a speaking site which is carolespiers.co.uk. The business site is carolespiersgroup.co.uk. Yes, I have written several books. One of the books is Toller's Managing Stress in the Workplace on Amazon, or you've got Show Stressor's Boss, also on Amazon. So therefore, those books are there and available. And yes, it really is. It's just talk to me. If you need a speaker at one of your conferences, the greatest of pleasure. Why do I like speaking? First of all, one of the reasons I like speaking is because I believe in what I'm saying. I really, really do believe in it. I'm passionate about what I say, because I see when it doesn't work, and I see people at the sharp end who've experienced burnout. And I think to myself, I wish you'd have spoken to me a little bit sooner. And then the reasons for speaking at conferences and seminars, or speaking to the media, because I'm a BBC guest broadcaster, is to get the message out there so that it helps other people, but to give them the tools so they can do the job. I'm not just saying, oh, we need to love everybody. Let's give people the tools so they can do the job, and they can do it more effectively, more efficiently, and actually show caring and support for their employees at the same time. That's why I'm beating the drum. I also head up a stress and mental health charity. It's what I do. It's who I am. And I'm going to say to you, yes, look up and put in the name Carole Spiers. You're going to see quite a few entries.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much, Carol. Really fascinating topic, one that I believe is relevant to everybody. So I am sure the episode will resonate. Really appreciate it, enjoyed it, and thank you very much.
My great pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for joining Carol and I. And we'll see you again next week on the next episode. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.